Misinformation can be deadly, especially on a topic like school shootings, because it can affect policies that have life and death consequences. For example, does arming teachers make schools safer or more dangerous? Let's look at just facts. In the wake of a school shooting that killed 17 teachers and students at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, President Trump said that a gun-free school is a magnet for bad people, and that highly trained, gun-adept teachers and coaches would be a great deterrent to these crimes. Prominent media outlets pushed back at Trump. Many deranged mass murderers expect to die themselves during their killing sprees, said the New York Times editorial board. It's almost laughable to believe that the president's proposal would deter them. The Washington Post reported much the same. Let's sort out these conflicting statements. First, the claim that armed guardians don't serve as deterrents is demonstrably false. One of the central facts of criminology is that lawbreakers often attack soft targets, or easy prey. In the words of the textbook Forensic Science Advanced Investigations, very often, a criminal chooses a target based on the vulnerability of the victim. The academic book The Psychology of Criminal and Antisocial Behavior says it like this: predators, irrespective of their end game, are exceptionally good at identifying the weak members of the herd. David Grossman, a former West Point psychology professor and internationally renowned expert on the mindsets of killers, explains that even terrorists who want to die are deterred by security because they desperately do not want to die for nothing. Our goal, says Grossman, is to win a battle in the minds of millions of potential terrorists in our nation who are asking the key questions: can I succeed? Can I get a body count? Of course, that doesn't guarantee armed guards will deter every or even most potential killers, especially if security measures are inadequate. To wit, some media outlets point to school shootings where armed guards were present, but the killers inflicted large death tolls. For example, the Star-Ledger editorial board claims there were 50 armed cops at Virginia Tech that day in 2007, but one guy with anxiety disorder murdered 33 people with 2 handguns and 400 rounds of ammo. There are 45,000 well-armed soldiers at Fort Hood, but a disturbed Army psychiatrist killed 13 people and injured 32 more with 2 handguns. And likewise, PolitiFact writes, but 2 of the deadliest school shootings, Columbine and Virginia Tech, occurred despite the presence of armed police. Columbine had an armed school resource officer, while the morning of the shooting at Virginia Tech, 5 officers plus the police chief were present on campus. Addressing the most outlandish of these claims, there were not 45,000 well-armed soldiers at Fort Hood. This is because the Department of Defense prohibited soldiers on the base from carrying weapons, except for official duties. As reported by a Los Angeles Times article on the shooting, service weapons are checked daily and are usually only allowed to be removed from an arms room for training on a range or maintenance. Personal weapons must be kept locked and registered with the base provost marshal. Also, there were not 50 armed cops at the university when the Virginia Tech shooting happened. Per the official Virginia government report on the massacre, only 14 officers were on duty when it occurred, including 5 on patrol and 9 in the office, including the chief. More importantly, the report explains that the campus population included 26,370 students and 131 major buildings spread over 2,600 acres. In other words, each patrol officer was responsible for protecting the lives of about 5,000 students, 25 buildings, and 500 acres. Such security is easily defeated because the killers need only wait until the guards leave their intended victims. Let's contrast that with the Superdome in New Orleans. It has a seating capacity of 73,208 people and more than 900 public safety personnel on duty in the stadium and surrounding area during large events such as football games. These figures amount to 1 security personnel for every 80 people. In other words, 60 times more security per person than was provided to the students at Virginia Tech. And what was the security ratio of other schools that had armed security and still suffered massacres? Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School had about 3,200 students and 1 armed guard during the massacre, about 40 times less security per person than the Dome. Columbine had 24 times less, with around 1,900 students to 1 armed guard. Large crowds, like those found in schools, concerts, and sporting events, are prime targets for mass murderers. Token security, like that provided at Parkland, Columbine, and Virginia Tech, doesn't equal proper security. On the other hand, considering the average teacher-pupil ratio in public schools is 16:1, Trump's plan to arm 1 out of 5 teachers amounts to 1 armed teacher for every 80 students. The same level of security at the Superdome. What about the cost of training, equipping, and compensating these teachers? Under a high-cost scenario where the teachers receive far more firearm training than police, it would be less than 1% of government spending on K-12 education. Still, a number of media outlets claim that teachers aren't up to the task because they aren't trained cops. However, data from the International Journal of Police Science and Management shows that people with recreational handgun experience shoot as accurately as trained police. Even civilians, who rarely have regular formal training, save far more lives with guns than are lost in accidents. Multiple studies published by scholarly journals and government agencies indicate that U.S. civilians use guns to stop lethal violence at least 100,000 times per year, while there are less than 600 fatal firearm accidents per year. President Trump is proposing that a select group of highly adept and highly trained teachers be armed if they really have that aptitude. Trump's reasons for arming select teachers instead of hiring more guards are that it would be much less expensive, and schools wouldn't look like an armed camp with security guards standing all over the place loaded up with guns. Even so, media outlets argue that teachers armed with handguns would be helpless against criminals armed with weapons of war, like the AR-15 used by the Parkland shooter. Actually, the AR-15 is a semi-automatic firearm, which means it fires 1 bullet each time the trigger is pulled. This is exactly how common handguns operate. While AR-15s look like fully automatic military rifles, their inner workings are essentially the same as guns regularly used for hunting and home defense. In fact, articles in gun magazines document that AR-15s are often used for hunting and self-defense. For instance, a former NRA instructor used an AR-15 to stop the carnage in the 2017 Sutherland Hills, Texas church shooting. And when that happened, media outlets simply called it a gun or a rifle. In vivid contrast, the same media outlets described the killer's AR-15 as a military-style rifle. The truth is that AR-15s are not weapons of war. As the book Military Technology explains, the most common military firearms are fully automatic rifles and machine guns that fire multiple bullets with a single pull of the trigger. As such, the U.S. Armed Forces weapon of choice is the Colt M4 carbine rifle, which changes from semi-automatic to fully automatic with the flip of a switch. Now, the AR-15 has advantages over common handguns when it comes to accuracy, velocity, and ammunition capacity. But handguns have advantages over AR-15s too, such as better concealability, portability, and maneuverability, which is crucial in school settings like down hallways and around corners. And arming 1 of 5 teachers gives them the tactical advantage of numerical superiority and quick response times. A report by the Police Executive Research Forum warns that on average it takes police 3 minutes to arrive on the scene and another few minutes to locate and stop the shooters. So for at least the first few minutes of an attack, the potential victims are on their own. It also states, our research found that many times active shooter attacks stopped because potential victims took action to stop the shooter directly, or they made it more difficult for the shooter to find targets. President Trump's proposal to protect the lives of school children by arming selected teachers and amply training them is consistent with facts of criminology, security, policing, firearms, and mass shootings. Nevertheless, many major media outlets ignore these facts and propagate blatant misinformation. Given that the lives of school children and teachers hang in the balance, twisting or hiding from the truth could have deadly outcomes. I'm Amanda Reed Sheik, here with Just Facts. For thorough documentation of every fact in this video and more facts about this issue, read the article Media Misinformation About Arming Teachers at justfacts.com.